Welcome to byProduct Live, where we unbox everything SaaS and product. We talk with experts and leaders in SaaS and product to understand their approach to leadership and ways of working, to share their knowledge and understanding. byProduct Live is brought to you in partnership with AmSource. AmSource are a specialist talent solutions business to startup and scaling tech businesses globally. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Scott Heyhoe, where we'll be digging again into prioritization. This time, we're talking about emotionless decision making, how we take the emotion but not the passion out of our decision making when prioritizing, and therefore prioritize more effectively. Scott's a very experienced CPO and VP who's worked across multiple domains in both B2B and B2C. This includes large corporates and startups, and in his current role, he's leading a SaaS platform in the compliance space, Comply. Scott's a competitive cyclist up to national level, and last year competed in the World Cyclocross Championships, finishing a very impressive 33rd in the world. It's really great to have you here today, Scott. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you, Andrew, and thanks for having me. Very experienced indeed. I've been doing product management for more years than I care to remember, and love every day of it. So it's great, really, that product management's now become kind of fashionable.
Yep,
I would say.
definitely. So let's dive straight into things. So really basic question, but I think one that needs covering. So why is prioritization important when building products?
I think it's as simple as, to build anything ultimately costs money. It costs engineering money and design money and testing and production, and you've got to train your sales guys up if you're a B2B company. You've got to do marketing. You've got to do product-led growth in your company. However you choose to do that. So there is investment to be made, and people want a return on that investment.
And what would you say are the biggest challenges around prioritization that you've seen?
I think there's, everywhere I've been, there's always far too many things to do, far more things than you can do in the time that's available. Normally with a product, whether you're enhancing a product or launching a new one, there's an optimum market window that you really want to hit, whether you want to be first or the first with a in a new space, the first with some particular new features. So you really have to have a look at that, work out from a very long list quite often of things that you like to build. Where do you start, and how do you go through them? And I think those needs come from lots of different places. One of the things I really like about product management is, on a good day, I will speak with customers, I'll speak with the sales guys, I'll speak with engineering and marketing, senior management, and the role of product management is to capture all of those needs that you see. And create a long list to start with, so that you've captured all of that, and that list will evolve. That list changes daily, quite often. That's for sure.
And I guess one of the challenges in there is when you're dealing with customers, with salespeople, with engineering, support, board, each of those individual groups obviously have their own priorities. And I'm guessing one of the big challenges is you disseminating that and deciding what the real priorities are, right? From those wide ranging, and not just saying, well, the board are demanding this, so I've got to do that, because often what the board wants might not be the right priority to take.
Yeah, completely. I mean, a couple of examples. I mean, how many times have we all had a salesperson come up and say, "If only, if only I'd had that feature last week, I would have won that deal." Or, "Actually, I'm working with a huge prospect, and if you can build me this feature, in the next couple of weeks, I will absolutely win that deal." And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Now, what I do then is, I'll go and speak to the customer directly, or the prospect, and ask them what are the challenges, what are they trying to solve. And then really understand how we can build that. But to your point of the board, the senior management, I remember at a user conference a few years ago now, when we used to meet in person. I did a sort of Dragon's Den up on the stage, and I got my product managers to each pitch a feature to a panel of customers, and they were questioned about it. These were all features that customers had asked for over time. And there were three of them, and they pitched. And then I got the audience, who were seated around tables, to vote.
Yeah.
And the senior management table all voted for the blue feature. Every single customer in the room voted for the yellow feature. So
Yeah.
I thought that was just really revealing. It was entertaining. It was fun, and I did build the feature because I said I would and knew how much it would cost. But for me, that really showed that it's very easy to have a disconnect quite
Yeah.
quickly if you're not careful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess in all those groups and in those discussions, this is where then emotion does it come into play. And obviously, as a product leader or a product manager, then it's important that you're much more decisive rather than being emotive and being driven by your emotions. So, why does that come into play with prioritization?
It's as you say. Everybody has their own viewpoint. Even I have my own pet projects, and I'll read something, see something, think I've got the solution to a huge problem. But then sometimes you go and talk to customers, and they say, "Hey, that's nice," whereas what you really want is, "My goodness me, I've wanted that all my life. Where have you been?" That's the kind of reaction you
Yeah,
want. So I think it's really important to listen to all of the stakeholders, listen to sales. What are they saying? If you hear it from two or three salespeople or two or three customers, then you're probably on to something, because it's not just the one. Go and talk to engineering. The engineers come out with fantastically innovative solutions. I've seen some great features come out of engineering that I've not even asked for.
yeah,
But if you're open as a product person, people will come to you with ideas. But then it's really important to start thinking about, well, if I do build this, first of all, how easy is it for us to build it? And if it's a feature, that's typically just an engineering task. So how long is it going to take you to do this? But if you're entering a new sector, a new market, a new geography, then you've got to think of broader things. As I mentioned earlier on, you've got to train the sales guys. You've got to update all of your outbound marketing. You've got to start measuring all of that. So the complexity to create something is not just the engineering effort. It's all of the
yeah,
other things that you need to do around that. And then you start thinking about, well, I wonder what the impact of this will be. And again, usually that's measured in revenue. So, if I have this feature, I can see what the market attraction for this is. I think I can help the sales guys to sell so many of them. We'll increase annual recurring revenue, whatever you're measuring your
yeah,
revenue income in. But sometimes it's, and again, this sounds strange from a product person, but I'll quite often say sometimes the press release is worth more than the product. Because if you announce something in a market, people go, wow, it's really interesting. They start paying you a lot more attention. They really take up your product, and that generates revenues, and that allows you to build more interesting things as well. So, again, it's important to think not just what am I building and what will it generate and how much will it cost. That's a lot of it, but think more broadly as well.
yeah. And so, in a practical way, how do you remove emotion when you're making decisions around prioritization? What's your approach?
It's simple. It's data. It's use information. There's no real emotion in data. So I'll go to normally the sales leader, the sales director, and I'll say, look, here's something that we're looking to build, to deliver, to push out. And again, this is in the B2B example. Let's use that one. I'll
Yeah,
go and talk to the sales team. I'll talk to the sales director and say, actually, how many of these do you think you'll be able to sell? How many customers? What does that look like? What would the upside revenue be? I'll go and talk to engineering and I'll say, look, how long really is this going to take you to build it? Can you break it down? Will it be delivered in sprints? Are we going to see something at the end of the year? And I get that data from them. And then I'll go and talk
yeah,
to marketing and say, look, we're going to release something in June or July, and what's the good time, and what do you need to do to make this have a big impact? I'll go and talk to customer success. Never forget customer success. I saved $1 million a year customer because somebody in customer success told me, you need to go talk to that customer. I think they've got an issue. And when I did,
all right,
we found it. And so it's really important to talk to those people as well and think about your existing customers, because retention is really important. That's where you get most of your revenue from, your current run rate. And that gives you a whole bunch of data. And then you can map that out. So quadrant diagrams, I find, are a great way, a very easy, very visual way of capturing this. So what you're looking for are those things that have got low complexity, so they're easy for you to build, easy for you to push out into the market, where there's high impact. And those are the ones that you really should be prioritizing. At the other end of the scale, of course, if they're difficult for you to develop, to build, and they have a low impact, you want to scrub those off the list. And then in the middle there, you've got those that are more or less easy and have more or less impact. And that's a list that you continually review to decide, what are you going to do and what you're not going to do. Now, I find because I've asked all of the stakeholders and because I've mapped out on that chart, and I'll go and play that back to the different stakeholders and say, look, these are the things we're going to do. Reasons are because generate revenue, they help us enter a new sector, and that's really important. And we can see a way for us to do them. It's all based on data. And people will say, "Oh yeah, but my idea is fantastic, but you've scrubbed it off." It's like, yeah, well, when we looked at it, it's very difficult for us to do. Requires a whole organizational change. Not really going to generate much money. And it just, again, people just react to that and say, "Okay, yeah, it makes sense. Don't necessarily agree with what you've done, but I can see how you've done it. It's robust. It's data driven, and that just, again, it takes the emotion out of it, not the passion. I'm still passionate about this stuff. You can tell, and I love speaking with people and bringing all of that data together and presenting it back, and then going and delivering it, which is, of course, the key part of all of this.
Absolutely. And how often would you reprioritize?
Yeah, it's a good question. Now, that depends, I suppose. It depends on the size of the company. If you're releasing things every 2 weeks in sprints and you're pushing those features out, to your customers, whether it's B2B or B2C, and you've got that rapid iteration, you probably want to condense that down to looking at what are you going to do in the next sort of 6 or 8 sprints. It depends really, 6 or 8 weeks sometimes. Scaled agile framework's quite a nice one where you might group together 4 2-week sprints, for example. And so every 8 weeks you pull something else off the list. I find, again, for sort of scale-ups, medium-sized businesses, I will normally do that around about every 3 months. So I know what we're certainly going to be building in the next 3 months, what we're probably going to be building the 3 months after that, and then possibly what we're going to be building the 3 months after that. And as we execute through, I extend that out, so we keep moving along that way. But within those 3 months, you do very much iterate, and you do your agile development, and you're pushing out those iterations. And then it's up to you, again, what you release out to the customer in that framework. You don't want to be doing it every week because, some of these are big ideas and they can take several sprints to develop and deliver.
Yeah, cool. Well, I think that's it sounds simple to implement, but obviously it's really effective to be effective, it needs to be managed effectively, right? And I guess that's where the strength as a product leader comes in.
Yeah, you've got to be robust, because people are emotional about this, and quite rightly. People have got their roles, they've got their objectives, they've got their commission plans, and that's their livelihood. It's the growth of the business. All of the things that they're passionate about are really important as well. So, again, I find this data-driven approach, mapping it out clearly, making sure you've got everybody's viewpoints, and they feel that they've been listened to, and you're representing that back to them. That means you can be really, really clear. But yeah, you've got to be robust because you're saying yes to lots of things. You're saying no to lots of things as well, and that's an important skill to have.
Yeah, and it's always easy to say yes, right, rather than saying no. But
that's right.
If you've got the data, I'm not going to say never, but very, very rarely lies, right?
Yeah, that's right. It never needs translating. It's people understand it. They see it. See it in black and white. That's right.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I think that's a really good point for us to draw today's chat to a conclusion. Just as we wrap things up, Scott, what would you say are the 3 key takeaways from the things we've discussed today that you think would be useful for people to take away and implement?
Sure. I think number one is, gather all of those needs, go and talk to everybody, make sure you've got as comprehensive a view as you can at a point in time of those needs. I think the second thing is to, as you're engaging with people, is really get their viewpoint, listen to them, get the data from them. That's important. How long is it going to take to build? How much revenue will it generate? All of those hard bits of data. How many customers do we need to actually sell this to in order to reach a break-even business case? So really capture that data from everybody again. And then the third thing is bring all of that together, plot it out, complexity against impact, and then present that back to the stakeholders with your decision. You've made your decision based on the information they've given you. And that really does take the emotion out of prioritization.
Okay, that's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time today, and we'll hopefully speak to you again soon.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for having me. Thank you.